Hey, good evening, everybody. We are going to be discussing tonight a little bit about Rachel Imeinu. Her yahrzeit was the 11th of Cheshvan, so we're about, 2 days out. Some of the themes we're going to cover tonight: the uniqueness of Rachel Imeinu, her ability, because I'll talk about. She was the only one of the Avos and Imahos who had an ability to claim Kaviyachol against Hashem, why Hashem should save the Jewish people. We're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about a theme, the fact that Rachel and really most of the Imahos, not all the Imahos, were raised in homes that were not exactly the most pure environment. And the questions we're going to deal with are, how did Rachel end up so far from her evil father, Lavan? And most of all, the main question is, what can we do? How can we learn from Rachel and Lavan, what were their main traits, how they manifested themselves? What can we learn from it for our own relationship to Judaism and Torah? That's what we're going to be talking about tonight. We're going to look at some of the midrashim that discuss Lavan, some of the midrashim that discuss Rachel. We're going to analyze maybe a little bit of their differences and try to come out with some practical advice, practical lessons for us to apply. So the first time we meet Lavan in the Chumash is actually way before Yaakov Avinu. It's actually in the story of Eliezer. Eliezer was the servant of Abraham, Avram Avinu, and he was given the task to go and find a wife for Yitzchak. So he traveled all the way to where Avram's extended family lived, someone named Besuel, who maybe has a daughter, and Eliezer finds Rivka there. She shows herself to be an incredible balas chesed. She gives water to his camels, to him. And Rivka very excitedly tells her family, look, there's this person here to greet us. He says he's related somehow maybe to us. And it says that Lavan actually sees him first. And Lavan saw all of his camels and the jewelry and the possessions that Eliezer was bringing with him. And Lavan actually assumed that Eliezer was Avram Avinu. And he was plotting. He said, listen, he's clearly a very wealthy man. If I kill him, I can take all of his wealth, and that'll be a big benefit for me. So that was actually the plan of Lavan. He was going to try to kill Eliezer. He thought it was actually Avram. As the story progresses, they invite Eliezer into their tent, and he explains what he's doing there, how he was sent by his master to find a bride for Yitzchak. And they learned that this wasn't actually Avraham, this was actually his servant. And they were amazed, wow, what a holy person Avram Avinu must be. If this his servant is such a present, such a holy person, it must be Avram Avinu is on a much greater, much holier level. In any case, at first, the camels of Avram that Eliezer was leading wouldn't even step foot onto their property because of the avodah zarah, the idolatry. They didn't want to be in the presence of. So the first meet that we see of Lavan, again, Lavan, the son of Besuel, the brother of Rivka, the first meet that we see is his greed. He's willing to kill someone for his money. And that's going to be a major theme in the life of Lavan. Now, they agreed to come to this. They agreed to this match. However, that agreement comes about. As a side note, it's interesting to note, Besuel, right? They tried to poison the food of Eliezer and end up within the conversation that the food that they had meant to give to Eliezer that would poison him actually ended up being switched up. A malach came and switched it with Besuel's food. He ended up eating it. He died the next day. Just a very fascinating thing. The Midrash notes, why did Besuel deserve to die? Now, okay, he could have said because he was trying to murder Eliezer. Okay, that would have probably answered the question. But the Midrash isn't satisfied with that. It says there was an interesting custom in Besuel's hometown. Besuel was the monarch of that area. And Besuel had an interesting custom that on the night of the wedding of every bride, he would be able to live with the bride before the husband. That was his right as king, he said. So the townspeople all said, okay, let's see what Besuel is going to do. If he does the same thing with his own daughter, okay, fine, well and good. But if not, we're going to kill him. So Hashem needed to prevent this tragedy from happening. Either way, it would have been a very tragic thing. So therefore, Besuel passed away before anything could come of that. Any relationship between father and daughter would have obviously been a terrible thing. So Hashem made it that Besuel had no opportunity for that. In any case, we see Lavan exemplified his greed. We see the home that they're from. Already, Lavan came from this home of Besuel. It was a home clearly filled with immorality and idolatry. And that would be a theme for Lavan as well. That was Lavan in the instance with Eliezer, the first time we meet Lavan. The next step, fast forward many years, Yaakov Avinu is fleeing from his brother Esau, who wants to kill him. It says during this time, he actually spends many years, or a decade, in the yeshiva of Shefa Aver. Very interesting thing. Ultimately, he makes his way to the house of Lavan. Outside of town, he sees these royim, these shepherds in the town who are sort of just waiting around the well, waiting, and the well is covered up. No one can get to it. Now, the Midrashim say an interesting thing. They say that the reason why the well was covered is because there was actually a big water shortage in this area. There was a lack of blessing going on in the area. There was a lack of water. In fact, Rachel Imeinu, who we'll soon meet, she was the shepherd. She was serving as a shepherd for her father. Now, why would he give a girl the duties of a shepherd? A shepherd's a very demanding job, very physical labor intensive. So the reason is, it says, because Lavan had suffered a large loss of his flocks. His flocks were not growing. In fact, they were diminishing. So there was a shortage of water, a shortage of food. And not only that, so far, Lavan was not blessed with any male children. He had daughters, but he did not have any male children. So these three things, Lavan was lacking. He didn't have male children. The water in the town was going dry, and his flocks, his assets were not producing. He wasn't getting the return on his investment that he would have liked. Now, that all changed with the arrival of Yaakov Avinu. And he sees Rachel, and he immediately realizes this is the person I'm destined to marry. And he goes to Lavan and says, please, I want to marry your daughter. Of course, Rachel tries to warn Yaakov and say, listen, my father's a trickster. He's not going to let you, just have a simple agreement. There's going to be, he's going to find ways to take advantage of you and try to get more from you than he ends up giving to the agreement. You have to be very, very careful when dealing with my father Lavan, Rachel says. So Yaakov Avinu replies to her. He says, listen, I'm his brother. When it comes to remoyus, when it comes to trickery, cleverness, being with it, able to respond to people's tricks, I'm his brother in terms of remoyus, in terms of trickery. Which we'll talk about this theme maybe in a little bit, but it's interesting to note, Yaakov Avinu's main midah, we're told, Titein emes Yaakov, emes, the truth. Always speaking the truth, always acting with truth. And yet we see here, Yaakov Avinu is proudly saying, I'm his brother in Ramois. I'm his equivalent when it comes to acting with trickery and with deceit, with deception, which seems to be a big contradiction to who we know Yaakov Avinu to be as the man of truth. So that's a thing maybe we'll try to speak about. Now, famously, the first trick that Lavan tries to play on Yaakov Avinu is exchanging one daughter for the other. Everyone knows the story that Yaakov Avinu gave signs to Rachel. Rachel, knowing that her father was going to trick Yaakov and bring Leah instead, felt so overcome with grief. What's going to be my sister Leah? She's going to be so embarrassed. So Rachel Imeinu makes one of the great sacrifices of all time. And she says, you know what? I'm willing to sacrifice being married to the husband of my dreams, being part of the building of Klal Yisrael. All of this I'm willing to sacrifice so that my sister doesn't become shamed forever, doesn't have to feel that pain. I'm willing to make that sacrifice. And it was the ultimate act of Mesiras Nefesh. In a sense, it was an eternal act of Mesiras Nefesh. She was saying, I'm not going to be a part of the building of the Jewish people, the building of eternity, the building of the abode for Hashem in this world. That's not going to be my chelik. That's not going to be my portion. An incredible act of self-sacrifice. And with that, Rachel gives the signs to Leah, gives those simanim, those signs that they had agreed upon, and therefore Lavan is able to pull the wool over the eyes of Yaakov. Nevertheless, Yaakov continues and says, once he realizes the trick, he says, listen, I still want Rachel. Here I am, I'm willing to work for another 7 years. Now let me please marry Rachel too. Now, to pull off this trick wasn't an easy thing. He had to have the agreement of basically everyone in the town. And he told people what's going to be. He told the people in town, listen, don't tell Yaakov this is what's going to happen. They all knew who Rachel and who Leah was. So he needed them all to be in on the town. So you know what he did? And it was also an act of deception. He said, listen, I'm going to tell you what I'm going to do. I need you to all be in on the plan. And to ensure that you're all in on the plan, I'm going to take collateral from all of you. So he asked all the people in town to give him their most prized possession. And he explained a very interesting thing. We noted before that when Yaakov Avinu came, there was a lot of things that were lacking in Lavan's town. There was a lack of water. Lavan himself had a lack of sheep. He hadn't yet had male sons, male children. And he noticed the funny thing. He noticed that when Yaakov Avinu came, that there was all of these things started changing. His flock started becoming blessed. The flock started growing. The water started gushing forth. In fact, he had his first male child. He saw that his fortune was totally changing as a result of the presence of Yaakov. And he said, if this is what his presence does, I can't let him go. I have to find every way possible to keep him here. And I have to share this with the rest of the people in my town so that they can be in on this scheme to keep Yaakov as long as we can have him in our town, because we see how we're being blessed for Yaakov, because of Yaakov's presence here. So with that, all the town people agree, okay, let's do whatever we can. We'll try to trick him, whatever. So Lavan says, let me take collateral from all of you to make sure that you all go along with the plan. And if any of you don't, I'm going to keep it. And of course, what does he do? He goes, he pawns it all off. He sells it. And when they come to collect their property, he says, listen, I'm sorry. You can go ask the shopkeeper who I sold it to. But that's where it is. So his trickery, his deceit, his greed, his self-centeredness. If you realize that all of this bracha was coming in the merit of Yaakov Avinu, obviously he should realize this is something coming from Hashem, and therefore I need to act within the derech of Hashem. And he did the exact opposite. He tried every sort of deceit and trick to keep Yaakov there, not because of his spiritual milas, because of his spiritual merits, but rather because what he's doing for him on a physical, gashmias level. The last thing that happens, Yaakov Avinu runs away. He runs away from Lavan. He says, and after having made all different sorts of deals and Lavan reneging on different deals and everything like that, Yaakov Avinu finally decides to run away. And Lavan, when he catches up, acts like a victim. And almost, if you read in the Chumash, the way it sounds is Lavan just isn't living in reality. Like, what do you mean? How are you acting like the victim? You could read all the psukim there. Lavan portrays himself as sort of this grandfather, this kindly grandfather who's just trying to act in the interest of his children and his grandchildren. And Yaakov, you're taking advantage, and you're kidnapping your children, and your wives from their grandfather. And it's like an unbelievable farce that Lavan is pulling over everybody. When in reality, he was just acting in his own interest every time. Okay. That's a little bit about Lavan. Let's talk a little bit about Rachel. Rachel, you could say, is in a way the exact opposite. Now I'm going to group for a little bit. Just Rachel chose to attach herself to Yaakov Avinu, to attach herself to a tzaddik, to marry him. I'm saying that was what she wanted. So I'm going to group Yaakov and Rachel, just for the purpose of this, together, sort of this, and talk a little bit about Yaakov and Rachel, what they represent to the Jewish people, their main character traits, and how we can use them in the service of Hashem. So we noted earlier that Yaakov Avinu called himself a master of deceit, that he's Lavan's brother in the realm of as a Ramai. He was able to do Ramos just like Law. And we know that this seems to be a strange thing. He's Yaakov Avinu is Titei Emes Yaakov. He's a man of truth. And in fact, for a person to grow in avodas Hashem the way Yaakov did, you have to be completely devoted to Emes. Yet, we see two major instances of Yaakov Avinu not living up to that. The first was with Esav, where Yaakov Avinu used deception to with the Bechira, when he sort of was able to get Esav to sell his Bechira while he was hungry and whatever exactly was going on with that. When Esav came in from hunting, he said, I'm about to die from hunger. Give me some of your lentil soup. It's hard to understand exactly what was going on over there. In any case, he was able to finagle out of Esav the Bechira. And not only that, he was able to get the brachos from Esav. He was able to get the brachos from Yitzchak by dressing up as Esav. His mother Rivka and him had a whole elaborate plan. He dressed up as Esav. He had this delicious meal prepared. So we see two major instances of Yaakov Avinu using deceit and deception against Esav. And later, with the story of Lavan, he says, I'm a master of deceit. I can do these things. I can keep up with him. Yet Yaakov Avinu is the Ish Emes. Yaakov Avinu is described as a Tam, sort of a simple person who does things with simplicity. And these two things don't really seem to match up. Another instance of this time Rachel, when Yaakov Avinu and Rachel were running away from Lavan, one of the things that Rachel did without anyone knowing was she stole called terafim, these sort of like little idols from her father. And her intention was very good. She said, I don't want my father to be, stooped in idolatry. We're going to be leaving, but what's going to be with him? He's going to be stooped in idolatry. She didn't want that to happen. So she took these terafim and she hid them. She didn't want him to know. So again, getting involved in sort of like interesting things, strange things, that she's stealing these idols. Why did she want to get involved with that? And yet, on the other hand, Rachel exhibited the greatest act of selflessness, like we said, by giving Leah over the signs, sacrificing her husband, but in a sense, aiding Lavan in this deceit with Yaakov. So, what's going on here? I don't know if I explained the question exactly right, but there seems to be, on the one hand, we're told Yaakov is emes. He's done emes to Yaakov, and this is their trait. Yet we see Yaakov Avinu involved in deceit. We see Rachel, even though she was doing an incredible act of saving her sister from embarrassment, but she also was involved in this deceit against Yaakov. What's going on? How are we supposed to understand these things? So let's take a look. What are the main midas of these two, of Yaakov and Rachel on the one hand, and Lavan on the other hand, and maybe we can A, answer the question, and B, come out with some practical advice for ourselves. So, Lavan, as we know, money hungry, greedy, extremely self-centered. He resorts to trickery and lies just to get his way. He was involved in avodah zarah. He clearly lacked any sort of emunah in Hashem. And not only that, he just tried to destroy. First, he tried to murder who we thought was Avraham, who was really Eliezer. And it says he tried to destroy Yaakov. He tried to eradicate Yaakov Avinu, and therefore the rest, and by extension, the rest of the Jewish people from the world, as we say in the Pesach Haggadah, the Passover Haggadah, Rami Ovid Avi. So Lavan is money hungry. He's a would-be murderer. He's a liar, a cheater, and he's an Ovid Avodah Zarah. He's pretty much the worst of the worst. Yaakov, like we said, could play Lavan's game in a sense. Obviously, he detests Rachel and Yaakov detested avodah zarah. And yet Yaakov is described as an ish tam. Tamimus means to walk simply with Hashem, to realize that what Hashem is doing in every situation is the right thing, to not try to force your way in any situation. And lastly, Rachel's main goal in life was to build up the Jewish people. In fact, there was the story with the Tudoyim, these certain herbal, certain plants or something that would be favorable for a woman's fertility. And she was even willing to give up her relationship with Yaakov to a certain extent for one night to be able to partake in this remedy, in order that she might merit to help build the Jewish people. So she was totally willing to self-sacrifice, to be involved in self-sacrifice towards the rebuilding of the Jewish people. So if we could point to the fundamental difference, I think there's perhaps two, try to speak out two things. The fundamental difference between Rachel and Yaakov, Rachel/Yaakov against Lavan, even though there's this aspect of deception involved in both sides, which you have to understand that better. They're both using wisdom. They're both using their chachma. In fact, when Jesus says Yaakoveni, Yaakov, he's called Yaakov, Yaakoveni, he tricked me. The Targum translates Yaakoveni as he acted with chachma. He acted with wisdom. We've mentioned this theme a few times before. There's two ways a person can use his chachma. There's two ways. The way Yaakov Avinu used his chachma, and the way tzaddikim use their chachma, the way Jewish people should try to use their chachma, is by humbling themselves and being willing to see how Hashem shows his chachma in the world, and then to accept that, to be makabel that. A person can look around the world, kula b'chachma siso. Hashem made everything with an incredible amount of chachma. And if a person is willing to be patient, Hashem will oftentimes show him that chachma. He doesn't understand how a certain thing might work out the way it's supposed to, and if he's patient enough, oftentimes he'll see it. Yaakov Avinu was that ish tam, that ish emes. He was willing to go through the process with Lavan, go through the process waiting, having to work for Lavan for 14 years. And he was willing to go through that process with a patience. Rachel she was willing to say, I don't know how this is going to work, but I can't bear to see my sister Leah go through such tremendous pain and shame by being exposed as a fraud. I can't bear to see that. How is this going to work out for me? I don't know. I don't know how it's going to work out for me. But they went in, whatever situation they had to go through, they went in with this tamimus, saying, I don't know how this is going to work out. All I can do is I can do the Ratzon Hashem in this situation. Spare my sister from the shame. Yaakov Avinu, all he could do was go through with working for this crooked person, love him. That's all he could do. How is it going to work out? I don't know. But I'm going to be patient. I'm going to see how the Chachma of Hashem manifests itself in this situation. How does Hashem's wisdom, his planning, bring itself out in this situation? Lavan, on the other hand, didn't have that midah. He didn't have that midah of tamimus. He was, in a certain sense, a chacham. He had a smart business acumen. He was able to cheat people. He was able to be very clever. But he wasn't trying to see the chachma in the bria. He wasn't trying to see the chachma in Hashem's plan. In fact, just the opposite. He said, this world is so imperfect. There's no way that things are going to work out in the right way. I have to force things exactly the way that I want them to be. I have to cheat, I have to lie, I have to deceive in order to bring things out the way they need to go for me. And obviously, a person with that perspective is going to end up making decisions and choices that are very self-centered. Because, you know, if a person wants things to go the right way, well, how do you define the right way? That's only my way. They have to go my way. So therefore, I'm going to cheat, I'm going to lie, I'm going to steal so that it can go my way. And that was Lavan's perspective. So he cheated every chance he got because he wasn't able to be patient and see, okay, how is Hashem's plan going to work out for me? Lavan could have taken a very different perspective. When Yaakov Avinu came to his town and there started to be broken, he said, wow, what a great thing that just happened for our town. We've got a tzaddik here. I see my flock being blessed. I've now finally had male children. He could have worked with Yaakov Avinu. Instead, he chose to do the opposite. He worked against Yaakov Avinu, trying to force his hand to stay in the town, trying to force his hand to get more labor out of him. And all of these different things came out of this sense that things are operating in such a random way. I don't have flocks. I don't have male children. I don't know what I can do. I have to grab onto something in order to keep some control of the situation. And that's what he put his mind towards. That's what he put his chachma towards. So that's this split that we have. Whereas Yaakov and Rachel took these deep dives of faith, deep dives with their tamimus, willing to say, okay, I'm going to wait to see how Hashem's chachma plays out in the situation. Lavan was the exact opposite. He said, there's no chachma here. I have to be the chacham. I have to force the situation to go my way. And this led, of course, Lavan to an incredible level of selfishness because I don't know how things are going to work out. So I have to take every precaution, every type of thing that I can do to make sure things go my way. And this we see a big difference between how Rachel related to Yaakov and how Lavan related to Yaakov, right? Lavan could have been a loving, caring father-in-law. Of course, he didn't do that. He was looking to see, what can I take from Yaakov? What can I do to get from him as much as I can? Without any thought of how can this be a symbiotic relationship? Rachel, on the other hand, went into the relationship with Yaakov Avinu, saying, I'm here to build Klal Yisrael. I want to be a partner with Yaakov Avinu. And we see that was what she merited to do. She had Yosef HaTzadik and Binyamin, and she was merited to be one of the Imahos, one of the great Nashim Tzidkaniyas of our history. And I believe it's in large part due to this midah that Yaakov Avinu and Rachel both possessed, this tamimus, this willingness to see what's Hashem's plan going to be. I don't know what I'm supposed to do. I know what I'm supposed to do. I don't know how it's going to work out for me. I don't know how it's going to work out for it, but I have tamimus. I'm willing to wait to see how Hashem's chachma plays out in this situation. Something that is the exact opposite of Lavan, the scheming, conniving Lavan, who said things aren't going to work out. I have to force the issue. I have to do whatever I can to make things work out in my favor. So for us, we live in a complicated world, a crazy world. There's so many things going on. We never know how things are going to work out exactly the right way for us. The only answer we have is we can be tamim tiyim Hashem lakecha. Be simple with Hashem, hope to Hashem, and try to be patient to see how Hashem's chachma is going to work out in that situation. Now, that could be There are certain ishtablism, certain things that efforts a person needs to make in order to help with that. But the main point is be patient, and if things aren't going exactly the way you want, wait, see what Hashem's plan is going to be how he's going to bring out in exactly the right way for you. And with that, hopefully we can have more emunah, more bitachon, and bring Hashem into our life where we're always trying to wait to see, wow, where's the chachma? Where is Hashem's chachma going to be manifest in each situation? Okay, everyone have a good night. Thank you for tuning in.